All right, I've hit recorded amidst four people laughing in my general direction, which I'm very accustomed to. But we have a very special show. Let me give a brief introduction. We have Holly Small on the show. Holly, you messaged Fern and I on Instagram and just to sum it up, hey, let's get some. And this was the question I'm going to ask. Is it fair to just say like black people to say, hey, get some black people on the show? I never know what the right thing to say is. That was my question that you guys started laughing at. What's the right thing for me to say?
I think black people's fair in terms of what we're going to talk about. We're gonna say black people a lot, and we're gonna say it over and over again. Black community, black people, black CrossFit athletes. So I think in terms of you using it that way, that's appropriate.
Cool. Well, thanks. And that's Brian Lowe speaking. Brian, you are CrossFit Invulnerable in Northern Connecticut.
Yeah, correct.
And Holly, what's the name of your box in Atlanta, Georgia again?
TFR CrossFit Total Fitness Revolution.
Cool. And I did your level 1. I remember you. Where was that? But I don't remember where it was.
In Jacksonville, Florida. I drove down.
Cool. And then we have Cameron. You are HCS CrossFit, and by the end of the show, you'll explain to us what HCS stands for.
Yeah, I'll give you the reason why I can't tell you what HCS stands for by the end of the show. But yeah, Cam from CrossFit HCS, Ferndale, Michigan, right outside of Detroit.
Cool. And you know this is a special episode because both Fern and I are on with a bunch of guests. So let's I think really, like we spoke about with Sid recently, and like Fern just said to you guys, it's really, let's just talk. Let's just have some conversations. Fern, I'll let you kick off.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just dive right in. Obviously, social media is an absolute dumpster fire at this point.
Yeah.
I'll give you guys my personal, and we were kind of talking about this beforehand, but I am exponentially more confused than I was 3 days ago about a whole lot of things. I feel like I fundamentally don't understand society as a whole, and what I said before we hit record is like, I just feel like we should all have better conversations and ask each other questions. Because that's the one thing I don't see a lot of on social media. I see a lot of angry people. A lot of it is absolutely justified. However, I don't know that that's how we progress forward, right? So it's just like, I acknowledge whatever we want to talk about. Like, yes, probably, I would probably agree with you guys. Like, and we haven't even asked any questions. But from there, it's like, what do we do about it? You know what I mean? So obviously, there's been some stuff floating around with regard to an email chain between Coach Glassman and a box owner, and Sin was on yesterday. But I guess I would just ask a very pointed question for you guys, right? Which is, within the CrossFit community, what are your feelings currently? Like, so we've got two box owners who from the black community, and then Holly. Like, I'm assuming, I don't know what the makeup of your boxes are, right? So can you guys, I guess, elaborate on that, and then talk about it a little bit, like where do you currently stand with just what's going on?
Cameron, you
want to go first? Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Cameron.
Brian.
Brian, go ahead. Yeah.
All right, I'll go. So we are in Northern Connecticut, East Windsor, perhaps, and it's in between a bunch of like very rural towns. Our makeup is mostly of the like Caucasian brand, a lot of like moms, and
you can say white people, Brian. It's okay.
All right, it's a lot of white people. But that's been my whole life. We get some people that come from a little bit further out, and we get some people that come from our cities, but are black. I probably have the biggest black population in terms of CrossFit athletes within the area. But I think that's because I'm the face of our CrossFit gym. So it's easy for them to kind of relate and drop in and be like, oh, CrossFit is for colored people. Because if you look at CrossFit on a big scale, the games, Google CrossFit, you're gonna see a white face. You're gonna see a white face. You're gonna see a jacked white guy or a jacked white girl. super sweaty, lifting some heavy ass weight or doing something absolutely crazy that looks like that's got no part of me in it. And to see a black face on a website kind of makes them feel a little bit more at home, I'm sure. And walk in and say like, hey, I can kind of relate to you in terms of you look like me, so this might be for me. So we're predominantly white, but I think we have a good base of black people from the area, and from like the surrounding cities and towns as well.
And then Cam, what about you?
So, which is funny. I mean, right outside of Detroit, and everybody kind of knows Detroit has a big black population, and so when we opened up, and I have some 3 other partners. My partner and romantic interest is also black, but we also have 2 white women that are partners as well. So it's 3 females and 1 male. And what we found, most of our population is still white, predominantly white. We do have a few black people that are in, but we're mostly women is in our group. And I guess it's the same thing as Brian was talking about. It's the representation of what you see. So we have 3 women owners and / coaches. So predominantly women are going to find us more attractive to the market. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
We do a whole episode on you being a box owner with 3 women partners and 1 being significant.
Yeah, man,
that's crazy.
It's a whole different thing. Yeah, it's a whole different thing, and a vibe. The vibe is very different. And we still obviously have male athletes that come in and work out and love it. It's just a very different vibe from coming from a much larger box. We're pretty small, a much larger space where that was male run, white male ran, and seeing the differences in how everything operates. So that's just kind of our demographic on how things go.
And then Holly, it sounds, because just based on the message you sent us, it sounds like your community is predominantly black. Is that correct?
Predominantly black. Our is black owned. They would have been here, but they just had a loss in their family, so they're dealing with that and giving them their time that they need. But most of our gym members are African American, Hispanic, brown, or whatever.
Yep.
However, we have, I'm considered, I guess, the head coach for the gym. Okay. But most of my coaches, it's half and half. I have 2 black coaches and 2 white coaches that they see on a regular basis. The gym, though, face is predominantly black.
Okay.
Minority comfortable, I guess you would
Got
say.
it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. The I don't know, there's a whole lot of things we could get into, but I guess, like, what have you guys seen in your local communities over the past, it feels like 12 years, honestly, since the George Floyd incident. And I think it was like a week ago.
Yeah.
It was like less than 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. But it feels like a really long time. That's just me. It feels like, I don't know. It feels like I live in a time warp and I actually don't know what's going on anymore. But what is it something you guys discuss in your affiliates?
So within the affiliate, we haven't spoken directly about it. We've spoken, about protests, and, I've let people come to me as they see fit, because I mean, again, just being Black in America, the last thing you want to do is be confrontational. So, like, you don't want to get in people's faces. You don't want to talk to people about this kind of stuff directly and approach them and trap them and make them feel like they're in a corner in your box. So I prefer to let people come to me if they want to talk about protests, if they want to talk about that kind of thing, because the last thing I want to do is make people feel uncomfortable. And I guess that's kind of the foundation of like why these issues are stemming, is because I feel like that and I've done nothing wrong. But that's like a base feeling that you have as like being a Black person, I guess, in the US, is you kind of want to make everybody else feel comfortable so that you don't look like a bad guy.
I think that is actually a common feeling. I don't care what race you are. I think everybody feels wildly uncomfortable about just having a conversation with people, right? Like I know plenty of people, like white and black, who feel the same way, who are just like, I'm not talking about it because this is going to lead to some sort of confrontation that I have no desire to deal with. And I think, I don't know what your experience with is, but I think it's really hard to have some of these conversations without like, and understandably without people getting emotional, right? Because it's emotional topic. So it's not even reasonable to assume that people wouldn't get emotional about it. But then it's like, how do we have those conversations? What about you, Cameron? Is it something that is openly discussed or in your community?
Well, first off, we just got the ability to work out together last, I think maybe 2 weeks now. So
shit, we didn't even talk about that because everybody forgot about COVID.
Right.
We're just like, oh yeah, you probably have. Maybe I didn't even ask if your gyms are open. Yeah.
Right.
So,
like we're still at parks. We can't even really go back inside the box.
Okay.
So we're at parks and we're still trying to figure out navigate that whole thing in the first place. So yeah, that's been one issue. So now that we've had people back out, I agree with Brian. It's a lot of people's escape is coming to CrossFit and doing these workouts. So we definitely don't talk about it before class. I don't want anything to
probably a good idea. Yeah.
Not at the whiteboard, it's not part of the whiteboard brief.
Yeah.
Right, whiteboard brief. We're going to talk about white privilege and black issues. Right? So here's why. This is why. So yeah, we don't talk about that before class, but all of our owners have been very vocal on their own platforms about sharing and discussing their views and about white privilege and about the protest and things of that nature, so that we make it very clear of what we want. And even on our social media platform, we've also done the same, is that we want to make it very clear that we agree with what's going on in these topics and such and so forth, so that if you're coming to us, you don't assume that we are outside of this and we are not paying attention to what's happening to the world.
Yeah.
We find that's important. And after workouts, when everybody's breaking down and we're just talking and everybody's a sweaty mess and can't get off the floor, if anybody wants to talk about it, we like to talk about it. We don't push it on anybody, because like you said, it is an emotional topic and people might just need that escape for today or that heaviness they don't need to feel. But we as coaches and owners, we don't shy away from this thing, so that we can also be that springboard if they need that type of support. If they want to go out and protest and they need somebody with them, they know that we're also there to help support that. That's important for anybody that's trying to have that kind of growth.
Yeah,
that's cool. And then Holly, what about the community at your box?
A lot of it's we don't try to glaze over it.
Yeah.
Know that when I ask you, hey, how's everyone doing? No one's doing amazing, really.
Yeah.
And giving them an outlet to actually say, look, I'm not okay. We all say, hey, how you doing? And I say, yeah, I'm fine, I'm cool, and they're not. Getting into the workout and understanding like this is a release, but kind of like was said at the end, giving them an outlet to get ready to go to their day, because a lot of them are going to places that may not allow them to fully express themselves. To be able to say that they're not okay, and they have to push down a lot of emotions and feelings to get through their day, and this is their time to say, woosah, let it out. Everyone's been very respectful and very accommodating within our Zoom classes, because as right now, that's all that we have at this point. Gyms are allowed to open, but the list of restrictions and rules is long.
Yeah.
That's where our
So you guys still have not had the personal interaction yet.
We've had small interactions on a weekly basis.
Got it.
Whether it's outside or in the park or in the gym with very delineated spaces, but not on the regular.
Got it. Okay. All right, so I think that gives a pretty like good context just for the conversation. So, and I also want to open it up. Like, if you guys have questions, we're both open books. Like, I actually think you're probably hard pressed to find two people who are more willing to have wildly uncomfortable conversations than Jay and I. So, if there's anything you're just like, how do you guys feel about this? Like, I'm more than willing to answer very candidly. So, but on that note, what I guess the question I want to ask is, because like I've gotten just a nonstop stream of DMs and texts from a lot of people in the past 12 hours, like both white and black, and people who are looking at me and saying, "What the fuck," right? And quite frankly, I didn't sleep at all last night, and I got like oddly emotional about it because I feel like as a leader in the community, I don't have any answers. And that's typically not where I find myself, right? Like typically I'm the expert. I'm like, here's what you're going to do. Here's how you move forward. And just to be clear, I'm not a stranger to racial tension. Like I grew up in South Louisiana. You know, I played basketball all the way through college. Like
Division one, just so
okay, Jay, yeah, right. You know, and it's a conversation and something that it's always been present in my life, right? Like I've never been like totally surrounded by white people. Like that's just not how my life has been, right? But I find myself with a gross lack of answers. Like I just feel confused. I feel like, and then you guys can chime in here, but I feel like society as a whole right now is so incoherent that I don't even recognize it anymore. So I kind of would like what your guys' thoughts are. And like, how do you think, A, what do you think the problem is? And then B, how do you think we start having better conversations to provide solutions for everybody involved?
Real quick before
we go ahead.
That question, I do have a question about yours. So you said you were in South Carolina and played basketball, Division I.
Louisiana.
Division one, yes.
Division I. That was the more important part, though. And you're not escaping from it. You're not in a void from the racial tension. What did you see? I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So growing up, my best friend growing up, his name is Victor, and he's a black kid, and his dad was the president of Southern University at the time, which if you've been south, like the Bayou Classic, all that stuff. So, and my dad originally coached at a high school in Jackson, Louisiana, it wasn't all black, but it is a very poor part of Louisiana. I mean, it is predominantly black. There's like a handful of white people. And so, you know, that's where I was every weekend, like with the basketball team and doing all of those things. And I did see racism. I've gotten in fights over things that people have said to my friends, because it was like, fuck you as a person. Like, it's not cool. Like, I don't care how you feel about that. Like, and so I'm not one of these people who's like, I don't see color. Yes, I think that's a ridiculous statement. But yes, I see color, but I also see them as a person. And like the way I've always operated in life is like, if you're cool, you're cool. I don't care. Yeah. Right? Like I don't care. Like it doesn't matter to me. You know, like the person that I spent almost every day of my youth with was black, and I saw him treated poorly and I didn't like it. Right. And then the people that I spent a lot of my college career with on the weekends, on nights, struggling, suffering with, they're black. And I have immense respect for those guys, not because they're black, but because they're good people. Right. They just happen to be black. Right. Like, and you know, I mean, it's completely accurate to say in college basketball, like, let's be honest, like whites are not the majority, right? Like if you're a white guy, like you're probably one of the few white guys on the team. Like it just is what it is. So, you know, so does that answer the question? I mean, like, okay. Yeah.
No, yeah, just getting to like some framework of where you're coming from and understanding there. However, I do need you to repeat your original question.
So I guess what do you guys see as the problem, and then what do you think how do you think we move forward? Right.
So I
don't even know if that's the right question, by the way. Like I fucking don't know. Like I've just been racking my brain because I'm trying to figure out how this conversation, and I don't know how to have it. Like I don't know anything anymore.
Yeah. I think part of the problem is this like lack of information, right? So we've been fed a history that is nowhere near 100% true, and been told tall tales and, you know, passed down information over time that puts you in a place where you just don't know what's going on. I find that, you know, from people I've had conversations with, and, you know, even members that have like stayed after to talk with me, like post class, like these guys have said, it's like being in a coma their entire life, and, you know, they just got fed like 180 years of information in 2 minutes, and they're like shit, and they're up in arms, and they're pissed off, and, you know, they're obviously allies in terms of the fight and the rebellion, but they're like dude, I don't know if I can curse on here, but they're like,
Sure.
what the fuck? they're like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like,
Yeah.
I've never known this was a thing. I didn't know life was like this. I didn't know you go through this on a daily basis. I didn't know any of this. And now that I'm finding out about this, they're like enraged about it. And I think that lack of information for people, you know, had people known and been privy to this, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you know, we could have been through this and been forward. But I think just one big issue is that lack of information for people. My wife and business partner, you know, she's white, and she had no clue about these things. The first time she'd ever like experienced anything like that, we were driving in a car. I got pulled over, and she goes to reach for my registration in the glove compartment, and I say, don't move. I'm like, don't move. I'm like, sit there and don't move. And she's like, well, why? And I'm like, don't move. The police officer pulls up, you know, hand on his gun, flashlight, looking around the window, you know, do you know why I pulled you over, et cetera, like, you know, how fast you were going. My hands are on the steering wheel, 10 and 2, you know, eyes forward, answering nice and loud, music is low. And eventually I'm like, my driver's license is in the center console, my registration's in the glove compartment, like, can I reach for it? You know, asking all the right questions and being appropriate about the situation. You know, we hand him the information, and he goes back to his car, and she goes, what was that? She goes, why was that like that? And I go, that's how it is every single time. Like, that is how you're supposed to behave when you're Black and you're getting a routine traffic stop. You know, and then I proceed to get a criminal speeding ticket for going 10 miles over the speed limit, which that's a whole nother story in itself, you know. But she, you know, we've been married for 3 years. We've been together for almost 10, you know, but she's just never been a part of that experience. You know, she's a great looking white girl who, when she gets pulled over, she gets a warning.
Yeah.
So it was just never a thing.
Can I ask you a question? Is that always been your experience with law enforcement?
I've had 2 good experiences, but I was within a group. So like individually, that's
so those
always
probably
been my
those don't
experience.
even count then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Individually, that's always been my experience. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
My experience with law enforcement has been more negative than not. I was asked to get inside of a police officer's vehicle, a male officer in the middle of nowhere. I've been given tickets for, you know, same thing. I'm going 5 over. I have a broken tail light. I have, you know, I wish more positive. And I think, you know, I'm also a trainer. So when I talk to some of my white clients who I'm like, I understand if you always had positive experiences with law enforcement, it seems very foreign. But to a lot of, you know, brown people, Black people, when the majority of your experiences have been negative, when I see blue lights, my brain goes through a whole different, you know, thought process. Try to make it through this unscathed.
Understood. And then Cameron, what about you, man?
Yeah. as Brian was telling the story, I'm like, is there another way we're supposed to react to police officers?
Yeah.
This is the common way, like
Yeah.
10 and 2, wait for the officer kind of situation. And my interactions with police officers that are outside of, like, I have a friend that is an officer, obviously cool guy because he's a friend. But anytime I've ever, let's say, if I see lights behind me, I'm like, well, I hope this isn't the time I'm getting taken in. I know I haven't done anything wrong, but on numerous occasions, I've had, in Georgia, I went to Georgia Southern for school. I've had on my ride down, I would have to, or have my car stripped and just left on the side of the road. That's been like 2 or 3 occasions. I've been searched, or just pulled over and just searched through the car just with the flashlight just to check it out on more occasions than I could ever account. I've been walking around with friends and have been put in handcuffs and just told to sit for a while until they figure out if I'm the person that did X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
And it's over time, you just kind of learn and you become numb to it, and you just look at, like, well, this has just got to be what it is, and I have to succumb to this, or I will be put into, or things will escalate if I try to react. And that's sort of what we see, kind of where a lot of these protests and things start to go to, and why many people are up in arms is because what we're seeing is maybe he did something wrong, and then the police escalated the situation where someone lost their life. And that is never cool. So then when we're talking about to our community of athletes and people that are around us, people who don't know, we're talking about, well, I have to be silent and I have to be completely compliant, even if it is against my rights as a person. Like, they can search my things, like, and I can't say, like, you don't have the ability to do that. You don't have the authority to do that right now. I can't say that because things will be then escalate. And we all know that. We know
100%.
that inside of us. And the people who choose to try to do something else, then issues happen. And that's the first step of things not being equal in this kind of
Yeah.
fight. But yeah.
So actually, would you guys mind giving your thoughts on just the protests / riots, like however you wanted to classify it? Like, would you guys mind giving your thoughts on that topic in general? Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's necessary. I think it's super necessary when you
What aspect of it?
all of it, absolutely all of it. I mean, in terms of, you step on people for so long, you kill so many people, and they protest peacefully, they march, they push for legislation, and nothing happens over and over and over and over and over again. And now, things have escalated to the point of violence, especially because we've been in a pandemic and people are unemployed and people are hungry and people are tired, and you have this perfect storm of like a 3-week almost attack on like Black people with Breonna Taylor and the Cooper situation, and then George Floyd setting it off. It's all necessary.
Was that the incident in Georgia?
That was the incident in Central Park, where the
with the woman with the dog.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, right. I forget what the name of the young man in the Georgia was.
Ahmaud Arbery.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And he was even before that. But
yeah, that's correct.
But you have that perfect storm that sets all of this up. So I think it's necessary. I think that the U.S. is very, very lucky, and I obviously, like, don't take this the wrong way, that Black people after slavery, like, never once mentioned the term vengeance, because in some sort of other society, or like back in like feudal times, like, it's an eye for an eye or whatever else. Not once ever has a Black person ever said, like, I want revenge for what was done to my people. we've only ever wanted equality.
Mhm.
And for that to be like such a big, difficult thing, I think that's absurd. We want nothing but equality, to be on a level playing field so that we can catch up, not even get ahead, just catch up
Mhm.
to the rest of the white / people of color.
Mhm.
But yeah, sorry.
No.
I end up a little tight.
No, well, again, like I think it's appropriate, right? Like I don't think, I think now's the time. If we're gonna, I don't know. There's no better time right now. It's just like let's open up. Like let's talk about it, right? Because like I agree with a lot of it. There's certain things that I agree with. Like if we're gonna split hairs on like certain things, like I disagree with some of it. But for the most part, I'm like, that was murder. The end. Like I
Yeah.
don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, Derek Chauvin or what the fuck his name is. The guy's a piece of shit. I don't know how else to say that. Like the end. I don't know anybody that, and it's weird. I don't know where you guys feel. It was weird that because I felt like for one split second, everybody was in agreement about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden it was just like, nope. And I was like, holy shit. I thought we could all be on board with like, that was a completely fucking unjust. We saw it on video. Like what in the fuck? Right.
Right.
And then boom, it went sideways. But I digress. I mean, Cam, it looked like you wanted to chime in there.
Oh, no, honestly, Brian really just hit it. Like that was what he said is exactly on point of what's going on here. And this, when we start to talk about what happened after Floyd's death and murder, is really just telling of like where this division started to happen. What you're talking about is this divide, is where people are not understanding how far this goes.
Mhm.
And what exactly the Black community is trying to get out of this. So when it happened, everybody looked at it. It's murder. Put that guy in jail. We're all said and done. Black people are fed up, and that's the thing. At this point, we don't want it just to be this bad apple situation, is what a lot of people are starting to say. Is like it's just one bad apple, and we got a few bad apples in the bunch, and that are police officers and messing up the situation for us. Black people are tired of that, because if we keep saying this bad apple situation, then we'll find another one, we put them in jail, and then we're good to go. No, there's a systemic problem that is continuing this cycle, and that's where we're starting to get fed up. And when we talk about this systemic issue and white privilege and things of that nature, then some people go, ooh, that's a little close to home, and then we start to get a little division going on, and that's where we start to have to, some people like yourself have to sit back and reflect of like, what am I doing? What is happening right now? And that's
I'll give you guys my thoughts. Here's where I think police departments in general. So like largely I'm a supporter of LEO, right? Like I've got friends or whatever. And I'm also in the camp of like racism is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who says it's not is dumb. Like stop. Like that is you're I don't know what planet you live on, but it's not Earth, right? And I want to throw this out there because I'm curious of what your thoughts are. Here's where I think the ball has been dropped repeatedly, and every time it's happened, I've said it, is we could agree, like no matter what group that we're talking about, most people are good, right? Like doesn't matter who we're talking about, right? Where I think the ball has been dropped almost every time is I think that police departments in general have done an awful job of keeping their contingent accountable for things that were done incorrectly, right? So for instance, I'll give you, and like a lot of my background is in the military. If there's something in there called fratricide, meaning like if we were in a combat situation and like we accidentally shot like our own person, like because of chaos or whatever that was going on, I mean, hell is going to rain down, right? And a lot of these scenarios, I've seen videos and I'm like, that person made a horrific decision right there. And whether whether they did it on accident or because they were scared or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? And that's where I've always been upset, is like, that should have been a prosecution. Well, I call it whatever you want, like negligence, ignorance, whatever. It doesn't, I like to, it's like, hey, the person who was drunk driving maybe didn't mean to run into somebody, right? But you did. So
Yeah.
you have to, there's repercussions for that, right? And I think if you're going to be a law enforcement, or you're going to carry a firearm or be in the military, there's a higher standard for your behavior that has to be had. And where I think repeatedly where they've dropped the ball is just like, well, this could have been justified, we have to do more. And I'm like, no. Any person who watches that video is like, you got scared, you made a shitty decision, and now in a lot of these instances, I feel like the police departments have done it to cover it up, which I don't think is right. And that's where I think they've repeatedly dropped the ball, where like most people watching and be like, that's pretty cut and dry. Like that is an unlawful shoot, right? Like you cannot go back and operate. Like apparently this Chauvin guy had like multiple,
long history.
Yeah. Long history of just like not practicing good judgment, right? As just being a shitty person. Let's just put it in that bucket. And that's where I think, I don't know if it would have changed it, but like my personal feeling is like, I don't know what the hell, why does it take four days to charge that guy? I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I don't know that it would have changed it. I don't know, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. Like, that is murder. Like, I don't know. Like my 6-year-old, she's autistic. She'd be like, yeah, that's murder. Like, right. So that's personally where I think a lot of that stems from. And I kind of like partially agree with the, I think that should be had in a nuanced conversation, right? I'm not saying, I would think, here's where I would say, I think within government, right, police, LEO, I think there are some obvious systemic issues. But I don't know that that's prevalent in society, right? Now, I could be wrong, right? I'm not black, right? So if you guys are like, you're an idiot, that's also fair, right? So, but I would like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's definitely some systemic issues that and laws and practices that are damaging to the Black community. And an example of that would be, and maybe not even a law, but it's just the operation of how some police officers or police, not officers, but the actual units and the precinct and how they are trained.
Mm-hmm.
If they're trained in a way and it's understood that they're in a Black community and they have a long history of telling all of their officers that this is an aggressive community, this is a high level, high crime area, right? So these people in this community are going to be more aggressive. So if you need to become or demonstrate the dominance in this community. Mm-hmm. Because if you go to a situation and you look weaker to them, they're going to trounce all over you. So you need to be more dominant. So when they come to a situation and it could be a criminal situation, let's say 2 people are fighting outside. They're already hot and heated. And these 2 Black people are fighting outside. They come in and and the police officer feels like they need to show their dominance in that situation. And the Black people might be bigger. What they're going to do is show their dominance by becoming more aggressive and making the situation or inflating the situation. So when that happens, then something bad happens. Somebody's going to jail for a long time over, maybe it was a bad card game or something like that. Some dice game. They were fighting, but they didn't need to go to jail, die, lose their life, or go to the hospital. Now, we can say that this isn't something that is only in Black neighborhoods. However, it is prevalent in Black neighborhoods because of how they're taught. Now, what that means, or just a simple solution, is to make sure that police officers understand what a de-escalation these de-escalation skills that they can use, because in other areas, they use them. We see that they can de-escalate a situation without becoming the aggressor. And that's kind of what's necessary, is that we need to understand that we can find ways and solutions that can benefit everyone, but what's troubling us, or what's troubling, is affecting the Black and people of color community more than just the white community. And that's
I agree with your assessment of the training portion of that. I think largely, I mean, if you look at, and I know a lot of people in the police department, I ask them all the time, just like what, like firearms training, just in general scenarios, like how much of that, and it's minimal, which is kind of alarming.
Yeah.
Right. Like I've probably shot more rounds in the military and done more training with regard to de-escalation, and that wasn't even my primary job, than a lot of police officers have done. And I think that's problematic when, like, if the first instance is to draw a firearm when there's like multiple steps before that, why is that the first thing that you do? You know, like, did you just not walk up and just be like, hey, what's the problem? Right? Like, what is going on here? Are you guys fighting? Like, whatever. But if I go there as the aggressor rather than, you know, like what they should be going as, which is like a peacekeeper, you know, like that's typically how they, in some instances, were referred to. I think I do agree with you. Like, that is a problem. And now I think we're kind of like past the point of no return. We're like, everybody is fucking scared, right? Like, police officers scared, right? Like, the black community's scared, fucking everybody's scared. And that's what I was saying when we started, is just like, I don't know how to come back from this. I was having a conversation with a dude I went to college with, and I was like, I don't know how do we turn the ship in whatever the right direction is. I don't know. And I don't know if we can.
Yeah. I think as a society, you know, we do have that ingrained, like, systemic racism, you know, within the society.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always, you know, that direct, like, I don't like black people, or I don't like people of color, or anything like that. But in the things people do and say, and the small actions that they live, you know, the small conversation where you can drop an N-bomb real hard with your one black friend, and it's real casual, and you're just gonna glaze right over it. And even if they say, hey, you know, that's not cool, and they're like, oh, well, it's not a big deal, you know, they'll explain it away for you. And how can you explain, you know, the pain that word brings away to somebody?
Well, that's a whole, like, we didn't even touch on that. That was I don't know if you guys, like, I'm sure you saw it, because like that was a misfit issue. I don't know if you guys, okay, yeah. So we didn't even touch on that yet. I was just like,
yeah.
So,
but like, as a society, like, that's okay, like, almost everywhere, you know. I mean, obviously, you know, you would never be brave enough to walk into like a black neighborhood, or you know, you wouldn't go to Brooklyn and drop an N-bomb hard. But you know, if you're in a white neighborhood, or I mean, even a white group chat, you know, and you have a one black friend, it's easy to kind of live that, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. Like, they say it in songs, they say it in movies, you know, whatever. Like, racism really isn't alive that much anymore. So, you know, we can kind of say whatever we want. And, you know, that word doesn't have as much power. And to everybody else, like, them saying, you know, it doesn't have that much power. Okay, that's your opinion. But in real life, and what we're actually going through, like, it does. It's still just as strong as it was, you know, in the 1800s, in the 1600s. It's life every single day for a lot of people. So I think society-wise, when it comes to those like little things, it's easy to overlook them because you can kind of explain it away, like, oh, it was a joke, it's not a big deal, like, you move on from it. But yeah.
Holly, you've been pretty quiet over there.
Trying not to cause too much noise with my microphone.
I told her in the private chat.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I didn't see that. Just the popping on there. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it was private. But anyway, chime in, Holly.
It's, you know, we're talking about what's the problem, and when it comes to law enforcement, and I'm my different take as far as my thinking is in our gyms, whether it's black owned, black coaches or not, the people don't always feel welcome in other areas because of conversations that may happen between other members about being comfortable to throw around the N-word or to report to a Black Lives Matter that all lives matter. To downplay emotions and reactions from Black people, and how divisive that can be, especially if it's not addressed by coaches. You know, if someone makes a comment in a class, you know, talking about de-escalating a situation or pointing out like that's wrong, I think that's where some coaches and some owners may be afraid to acknowledge that at that moment. We're talking about racism in our boxes, you know, whether you're predominantly Black or predominantly white. It's important to educate and not, you know, if someone says something in passing or as a joke, to educate them like, hey, that's not okay. I don't hate you for it, but I'm letting you know, like right now, like that's not cool. Just as if to drop an empty barbell. Like that's not what we do here.
Yeah, got it.
That well, you made an error. We're gonna address it, and then we're gonna keep it moving. So.
Do you guys see a lot of that in your gyms?
Dropping empty barbells?
Well, no. Hell no.
Those people get kicked out.
Absolutely not. I'd be like, listen, you're no longer a member and I'm charging you double.
Yeah.
Like you're racist.
No,
You're racist. That's all right. You could stay. You drop an empty barbell. You're out of here.
You're out.
No. So my question is more along the lines of I hate the term, but like microaggressions, like these kind of like ignorant little actions. Like what you guys are telling me right now, that just people casually using the N-word. I'm like,
Yeah, I had no idea. I would never.
I'm like, what? I'm like, to me, that is, I have a visceral reaction regardless of who uses it. Like the way I was raised, I'm just like, I don't know why the fuck you keep using that word. Like, please stop. Right. Now I'm not going to tell people that they can or can't, but I'm just like, that's just my personal feelings on it. But do you guys, it sounds like you guys, it happens frequently enough that you're having to address it in some way, shape, or form. Is that fair? Is that a fair statement? I don't know.
Hey, real quick, I've been a member of other boxes.
Yeah.
Where things were said, or, you know, after another Black man was killed, and I, you know, came in and they were like, "Hey, what's going on? What's wrong?" And I said, "Well, I'm a little concerned that when I go back home, my husband may not be alive. Like, I don't know what's going to happen today if this is becoming the norm." And they replied back to me, "Well, Black people are killed by more Black people. He has a greater chance of being killed by another Black person than a police officer." You know, and it created an environment that I did not want to be there anymore, because it's.
Which is understandable. I just think that's one of those things where, I don't know, that like, maybe just shut up. Like, maybe just not respond, whatever, and just be like, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I don't know. But like, sometimes you just can't teach people like social, I don't know. What's the word? Yeah, where I'm just like, maybe your opinion on statistics is not relevant at this current time. Like, maybe shut up. You know, like.
Yeah, I mean, that's not even social etiquette. That's just being a nice,
good person, right? Like,
yeah.
A lot of other people, my members, are chiming in.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious, because I think in a lot of instances, everybody in society, we get caught in our own bubbles, whether it's your own gym or whether it's your own city, whatever. Like, because cities are different, right? Like, and sometimes I think we fail to just kind of pick our heads up a little bit and just kind of look and see what's going on around and realize that, like, hey, like, I may live in a bubble, whatever that bubble might be. I don't know what it is, right? But what do you think the conversation is that needs to be had, right? So like, Brian, you were referring earlier about, you know, like the Black community is just looking for equal treatment. Like what, and here's the conversation. Like, what can we do? Like, when I mean we, I mean collectively, like CrossFit boxes around the country / world. What can we do to start to have better conversations and start to come up with solutions, whatever those solutions might be, and do them collectively?
I think a big thing would be to be more sensitive to these kind of issues. Obviously, all boxes are like mini communities. Part of a bigger community of the CrossFit whole. But to be more sensitive to these issues as an individual community would be huge. I know personally in the area, I follow a lot of boxes, obviously, because as a good business owner and a competitive CrossFit athlete, you're looking at other boxes and what they're doing and how they're advertising and their Instagram posts and their Facebooks and things like that. And, as the week was going on, I'm not seeing posts about anything. I'm not seeing support about anything from all these boxes in the area. And obviously, you go on every 15, 20 minutes away, there's a CrossFit box in most places. So you follow all these places on Instagram and you look for the support, you look for them to say, I stand in solidarity. Maybe I have a single Black member, but I don't know, I don't understand, but I support. And there's nothing in the area. There's nothing from people around. They post their black box for Blackout Tuesday, I think, to not feel left out. But
So what's your thoughts on that? I'm genuinely curious what you guys feel about that.
the Blackout Tuesday aspect,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the idea was good. I think it was more so for like the entertainment industry. It was good to see the solidarity of a lot of people, but I mean, it's really easy to take a picture of a black screen and post it and not really put any thought behind it and make it seem like you're for the support so that you don't get any backlash. And I think that became more prevalent than anything else, because if you have a post before that that says nothing about the issues going on, and then you have your Blackout Tuesday post, and then you have another workout post afterwards, or another post personal afterwards, like, okay, like what was the point of your little black square?
Mhm.
I full disclosure, like, we posted it on our gym, right? I didn't post it personally. And that was because by the time that I felt the same, I felt it would be disingenuous. That was my personal I was like, this doesn't mean anything. This doesn't mean that I am not racist. Like, just for a lot of people who are posting it, who are still shitty people, right?
Yeah.
You posting that black box doesn't mean that you're going to interact with people any differently. Like, I think a lot of people just posted that to basically to feel better about themselves, right? Now, I'm also not saying that you shouldn't post it. Like, I think a lot of people posted it genuinely out of concern and support.
But I
But
think
I
you're
was
right.
just-
I think for most people it ended with that. Like, I did my part,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
like I had a whole
Yeah, I
conversation.
checked the box, everybody.
Right.
I'm not racist. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, no, that's not how this works. Like,
Yeah, like our media guy for Thunderbro wanted to do it, and I was like, if you feel like it's important to you, do it. But in my opinion, I was like, this is silly. Like, this is like putting a black box is not the same as, and just from my perspective, trying to just listen. Like, this is all somewhat, like, to be honest, like, crazy to hear. Like, I'm just like, it isn't. Like, it's one of the from like a white guy growing up in the suburbs. Like, I had my black friends. Like, I had sleepovers. Like, I didn't know any different. But then you kind of are aware that something's going on, but not to the extent that you guys are explaining and that we're hearing. And you're right. It's like, it's culminated in the fact that I'd be like, we need fucking revenge. Like, that's like what you said earlier, Brian. I'm like, we're killing everybody and we're taking over this planet. Like, that's how I would feel. Like, I know it's like outrageous, but I mean, if, like you're saying, it's like, I just, so that feeling of like the black box isn't enough. And then my wife and I, did you guys see that show on Netflix called 13th?
Yeah.
So she was watching it last night. Full disclosure, I was watching UFC, but she had the subtitles on, and I'm like reading it while I'm watching, and I'm like, that was like, I was like, something needs to be done. Like, that was like, and I think that's why what you said earlier with all this, it is like important because that's partly what it's taken for me to realize like, wow, this is way bigger and way deeper. I think that's the crazy part that I was like, wow, this is like some of it's government related, like bills that were passed. It's like there's been a plan for the last at least 50 years. So they started it at least on the show with Nixon, with a couple of his people, and then it extended through Reagan and Clinton and Trump, and it was like, wow, like this has been like in action. And like we last night, and I was like, wow, this is me as a human being, and like this is I was like, wow, this is empathy. I was like, I feel empathy. Like I was like, I didn't realize I was like getting so heated in bed as she's, and I'm like, and I was like, what is this feeling? Because I'm like such a so in a bubble. I was like, oh, that's empathy. Like I feel like this visceral like pain and wanting to do something. And I guess my question becomes like what do, like Fern kind of asked it, but it's like, but really like what do we do? Like what can, whether it's just as two white dudes or as box owners or as people that have a voice in the community, like literally what can we do?
Yeah. As far as like, I've had many conversations because a lot of people are feeling, white people, including the people in our box and friends that I have, are very much like you two, where they want to do something and they feel empathetic about the issue. And what I said is like, there are many Black leaders and organizations and communities out there that know what they want. And that's the biggest thing, is to go to those people that know what they want. There are nonprofits all over the place that are trying to do better things and trying to move things forward for the Black community. So if we're trying to just make these changes of, let's say you just want to throw dollars into something, as a CrossFit gym, and you all these local affiliates or whatever it is, if you have money and you see in your local area there's a nonprofit that's doing fitness for schools or fitness for teens that don't have anything, like for a football team or something like that, volunteer your time, because they have the idea, they know what they want to do here. They just might not have money for it. Maybe they don't have staffing for it. Maybe they're so busy with the business ends of it that they can't get more coaches or qualified coaches to kind of, start to get better or get ahead. And it's the same thing with anything else. If we were talking about outside of the CrossFit community and we're talking about mental health, let's say mental health is something that is near and dear to you, and a lot of people have that for them. There are places in communities, there's large communities, and Black communities is one of those things that mental health is kind of taken a back burner because we have a lot of other things that we have to deal with. But there are nonprofits that can help mental health. Go and ask them. Just all you have to do is email them and say like, hey, what can I do to help support this? If it's just dollars, then I can give you dollars. It's a volunteer time, I got volunteer time. There's if it's just you want to be on social media to kind of do stuff, there's all types of social media platforms and people that are starting to educate more and more because people are trying to learn. So like you can look at like Iron Roots Athlete is a great resource to kind of understand where things are going. And that's the best way to kind of approach this, is not to think like, as you two or the people or anybody that's listening to it, what can I do? And then go out and start trying to make changes that way. That's the Black community. The Black community's been here. We know what we want. We need help. We need to be lifted and empowered. That's what it is. We need to drummers in the bass line so we can play lead guitar and sing. So
yeah.
So on that note, so if I'm thinking about, because I was actually having this conversation, whatever it was, 1 or 2 days ago, doesn't matter, but with another affiliate owner, and he was like, hey, I want to get together next week because I want to start talking about like youth programs, right? And I was just like, done, dude. And so I go there because that's easy for me. Like that's the world I grew up in. And I'm like, bro, that's easy. Not only is easy, quite frankly, selfishly, it'd be fun, right? I get to interact. Like I love kind of like mentoring athletes and going through whatever they're going through regardless. So I'm just like, for me, I'm like, well, where would my skill set be suited best? And I'm like, obviously on the court or on the playing field. We're like, so let me figure out how to do that, right? Like, let me take the skill set I have now and my experience and try to help, youth like sort it out. Like, because I remember being a youth, you're like, what the fuck, man? Like, I'm trying to navigate this world. I want to play at the next level. Like, how do I do that? All this stuff, and I saw a lot of guys who, quite frankly, were better than me, but who lived in horrific conditions.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could tell you some stories about like the best athletes I've ever seen ever. And I play with quite a few dudes who made it to the league. Nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
They literally never made it out. They literally never made it out of the community.
Ern, if you just want to talk about your Division One.
No, what I'm talking about is like
another episode.
Listen, they were all better than me, right? Every single one of them, right? But what I'm saying is like, how do we start to try to like scoop up those kids and like get them on the right path and get them in a situation where they can succeed, whatever that might be, right? And then so that they can do that, because if they're talented enough, they should be there, right? Whether it's education based or whether they just need to get out of the projects or whatever. Like, how do we do that? That's what Steve Libravity's thing was, just like trying to get it with Steve's club. It's just like, okay, well, how do we do that? So like, that's where my mind goes. It's because like, that's what I know.
Right. And that it's exactly that. If basketball and improving those athletes, and like you said, there were players that were better than you that didn't get the opportunity as you, then you can now look at it and say like, okay, well, I know how to coach, or at least I know the steps it takes to get there. And here's an organization over here that is trying. Maybe they don't know the knowledge that I have. So I'm going to go over to them and say like, hey, I'm going to like not impose your power on it, but say like, hey, let me help out any way I can to get these athletes in a D1 school so that they can be better than me and go to the NBA and go do some things better. So then that way it propels the program. So it's not just you instituting yourself, and if you were to ever leave, you want to make that program better. And that's what the big thing is. You can do that.
Yeah. I think how to help and necessary steps is, advocate, support. I mean, donate, like Cameron said, like if you do what you can with what you got. But the more we can advocate for Black people, like with Black people, use, your whiteness as a tool to help Black people, it's a long game. Obviously so many things have changed and over the last week, but we're playing a long game. Like I've got a 7-year-old, my son's going to be 7 next month. He's obviously mixed race. I don't want him to grow up his whole life and only ever be looked at as Black. He's mixed race. He has 2 different cultures that he's going to be a part of. But right now, growing up, you're either Black or you're white. So if you're mixed, you're Black. Because you have Black in you, you're Black, and that's it, period. And he's going to grow up in a nation that we can help change the narrative on what being Black is. So if you guys can use, your whiteness to help say Black people are dope, I think that's huge, and it sounds so simple and it's so stupid, but the more white people say, hey, Black people are great, the better off we are. And it's I listen, I'm on board, bro. Like, listen,
I'm gonna make that the title of this episode. Black people are dope.
Black people are dope.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not gonna work out for you.
Yeah, it's so one of the things Jay and I have talked about is, I think what we're going to try to do here is just like, as many people want to come along. Like we have a microphone, right? It's just like, you turn this thing on and like not tens of thousands of people listen to this, but like enough people that have influence listen to the podcast, right? So we're just like, are there other people that you think we should have on the show? Like, we have a list of people we think we want to have on the show, right? Like people that like are mentors of ours, quite frankly, like of Jay and I, that have helped us, that we want to bring on and just get their thoughts and figure out, like, again, how to have better conversations, like how do we start to figure out what the solutions are and understand each other better? Like, I think everybody needs to understand everybody better. Like I need to, like, we all need to understand, like, I think there's a lot of people that don't understand how black people in the black community feel, like really feel, right?
Mhm.
There's like, oh yeah, you guys are upset. And I'm just like, no, it's probably a little bit more than you're just upset, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and then I think on the other side, I think, I do think it's worth noting that a lot of white people are just scared to have the conversation. Like I think a lot of, I'm not, because that, like, I'm not, right? Like I'm willing to have a conversation with you guys. I like it, whatever, people are people. But I do think a lot of people, and I don't know, maybe you guys can help here, are afraid to have the conversation because I think they feel like simply bringing it up is going to make them come off as racist.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't know
why-
if that, I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but like, I think people are scared to talk about it, quite frankly, particularly right now. I think they're scared. I think they're scared shitless to talk about it.
100%.
That's why in the beginning, and I think Fern and I've always been like this, I've said to everybody, it's like, as long as you're coming from a good place, ask questions, talk about these, like the beginning of the episode, like what is okay to say. I think there's people that don't know, and then they kind of just, well, I'll never talk about that ever again, rather than just saying, hey, let me just ask what's acceptable, what can we talk about. And like Fern said, we're open books and we're willing to talk about anything for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think what ends up happening, like you're saying, people are scared to be, considered racist. But as soon as you bring up race in a situation with a lot of people, they feel that they have to defend themselves immediately. Like there's no
fair.
actual conversation that happens. You bring up race and they go, no, dude, I'm not a racist. Like I have black friends.
That has always been like the weirdest response to me. Just be like, no,
Yeah,
I've got
like-
black friends, and I'm like, I don't know how that's relevant, but
yeah, like it's super cringy. Like okay, like and
Yeah.
hey, cringy's a white term, bro. You can't be using that one.
right?
Taking it.
But like as soon as that happens, like people get automatically defensive, and then they start bringing up the stats and quotes, like Cameron was saying, like, oh, well, black on black crime is this, and they start bringing in these numbers to kind of defend themselves. But you're like, hey, man, I just wanted to open up a conversation. Like, do I have to start out every conversation by saying, hey, I don't think you're a racist. Let's start talking now.
I think coming from being honest, saying, like a lot of people have said to me, like, I don't know. I know this is wrong. I didn't know how bad it was. How can I help?
Yep.
What do I not know? And going from there. But Brian's right. It's like you try to want to have a talk about it, and it becomes, they feel like you're calling them racist by having the conversation, when it's like racism is a thing, like there is air, and we still have to talk about it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I also think it's naive to think that we're ever going to get rid of it, like completely.
Yeah.
And because I've been all over the world, I've seen some pretty horrific things. And it's there, and I don't like, it's not going anywhere, but how do we deal with it within our sphere of influence, right? Like, how do I make sure that I make sure that I am a good human being? Like if you go to some third world countries, there's some horrendous shit going on over there. Like it's not going away. Like anytime, it's been around forever. So I think it's just like, yes, it's a thing. I don't appreciate people who are like, no, racism's not a big deal. I'm like, no, it's a fucking big deal, dude. Like, like it might not be for you, but that doesn't mean it's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But then how do we move forward doing that? It's just like, yeah, stop having your blinders on, and let's have a real conversation that's uncomfortable. Like, and they'd be like, yes, it's a thing. How do we start dealing with it in our communities? And then coming up with a solution. And I think, is there something we can do for any of you guys, like for your gyms, or like with the podcast or whatever? Like, I guess like in this scenario, like how can we help you? And if we can't, like then point us to somewhere where you're like, hey, this would be a good thing for you guys to look at. So like I wrote down, where is Iron Roots Athletes? What is that about, Cameron?
Iron Roots Athlete is it's an Instagram page,
Okay.
and really what they are doing right now is just trying to connect Black strength and conditioning athletes together, and just try to push that. They're trying to push the messages that the Black community is getting out there of health and the health in the Black
Of health,
community.
you said?
Yeah, of
Health,
health in the
okay.
Black community and
Got
strength and fitness in the Black community. So they're posting a lot right now because of what the message is. They're trying to trying to remember what the last thing. It's a lot about what the affiliates are going through.
Yeah, I think the reason. Yeah, this one says supporting your gym's de-affiliation, which
yeah,
yeah,
which is a whole thing. But
Yep.
it's that's just a brand new platform, and then they're trying to obviously grow and do things there, and there's a lot coming from that. Ourselves, we're going to be putting out a shirt that says Black Health Matters, because there are a lot of different issues with Black women health, particularly, that we want to try to inform people about, and then the proceeds are going to start going to some funds, and then we have a Robin Hood Fitness thing that we're trying to put into schools, where it's just getting money and being able to support programs in Detroit, the inner city schools and things of that nature. So, I mean, buying a shirt and posting it or whatever like that, and I can give you a link later on, but those things would help us specifically. But I think really what I want is everyone to understand that there's no downside of helping Black communities with what they want. And it is absurd to me that anybody would argue to not help Black communities when they're asking for help. And that goes for any community that is asking for help. If you help them, that it doesn't put anybody down. It only brings people up. It's absurd for anyone to have an argument of something else.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Anything else? And honestly, we didn't even get to some of the topics, and that wasn't honest, and that wasn't.
I was waiting for the Glassman question, man.
Well, let's talk about it, like because I don't want anybody to think like we intentionally didn't. I thought this was a good conversation. Just
Yeah.
but let's talk about it. I mean, so I guess there's
What
probably
were your
two
thoughts
topics.
on it?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, there's two, so address whichever one you want.
Before we kind of go into that, I do want Brian and Holly to be able to do the same thing. Like you asked me.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like obviously being like a gym owner, it's push and plug. Like, tag us, post us. The more notoriety we get, obviously, the better it is for our brand, and we can speak out and use our popularity and notoriety to inform others. We don't have as much going on as Cameron with like inner city schools or anything like that. But we host our Pride is something, I just got in my Time Hop. We do a Pride workout every year to support in June, because obviously we're allies for that kind of stuff. So to be able to create something for the Black community as well, some workouts, some hero workouts, or create a fundraiser in that sense to donate to the appropriate places, I think is huge for us. And that's where we're trying to go with all this stuff. Even with this whole, COVID-19 pandemic and, people being closed down and, memberships being a little bit low, we still want to push for that support and donate as much as we can to the proper places.
Cool. And then Holly, anything for you specifically for your gym?
I feel like I'm thinking back from both of their statements, because having this conversation, continuing to have more conversations like this, so it becomes a little less uncomfortable for people. All to this podcast frequently, and I recommend it to a variety of people. And then showing as an example of how you're taking what you've heard and learned and showing others like you how they can continue to help Black community, because we are hand out help, and we're trying to help ourselves and work hard to make life better for look like us, for our general communities, but take an extra step in showing people like this is how you continue to help and reach out for people who don't know how to have a conversation or don't know how they can do to help.
Who has a Chihuahua?
I have 3 Shiba Inus and
I need to see one of these dogs.
Yes, I will absolutely show you. But yeah.
Well,
So I
so
don't know,
obviously,
like, so wait, but can I say something, friend? Like, I don't know, like, when, like, what jokes are allowed to even be made, because Brian is the whitest dude on this podcast right now. He's got three
Shiba Inus.
Using the word dope. I mean, come on.
It's my culture. I've only been in this like rural suburban area, majority dominated by white people. So you talk to fit in and you live that life. I
think this is more of a your wife told you you're doing something, Brian, and you're doing it, and that's how you wind up with three of those dogs.
With three of yes, one would have been nice for me. Three is definitely her.
Well, obviously, you guys have open invitation to send us anything that you think that we can push out to the community. Like, just send it our way. We're happy to share it.
I'm getting yelled at by my wife.
Which is probably, and it's probably, you probably deserve it. But
Yeah.
But yeah, the anything you want us to share, send it over. We're happy to do that. Yeah, I mean, open mic, guys. Like anything you want to address.
Yeah, I'm anxious to hear.
The Glassman thing and has been really interesting. So, Jason, you said you hadn't read the earlier comment. The
only reason I saw it this morning was because my wife, we're friends with Steph Hammerman, and she had posted like a really, I wouldn't say negative, but she was very upset about it. And then I looked into it. But if you don't listen to our podcast, I deleted Instagram and Facebook from my phone, so I can still check it. I still have it. I still post, but it's not on my phone, so I don't check it as often. So I went on and saw the comment was made Floyd 19.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it originated from the response to Rocket CrossFit. Was the first thing that and the person.
Those are connected?
No, they weren't connected, but they happened so quickly together.
Okay.
I think it's important to kind of note how it built.
Yeah. I thought, okay. Yeah. No, I agree. Like, it was back to back, and you're like, oh God. But yeah.
Yeah.
But okay. Yeah. I didn't. Sorry.
No. It's So originally, I read the response from Glassman to the Rocket CrossFit. I'm going to say owner or coach. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it was an owner. Pretty sure it was an owner. Yeah.
So the Rocket CrossFit owner, and I saw the response. I was like, "Ooh, that is pretty snarky kind of reply." But at the same time, I'm thinking like, well, it doesn't really have anything to do with any of the racial issues. There must have been something in your email that he didn't like. So then I read the 40-page manuscript of an email. It was lengthy.
It was long.
I did some research. She's a writer.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean,
right.
It was well written for sure.
So I read that, and my biggest issue with that, and the reason why Glassman could respond that way, is because it didn't support or really push Black lives or the Black community. It more supported who she was in the CrossFit community and what losing her meant, instead of what losing Black people or not gaining Black people or helping the Black or health community at large. So that's the only reason why you could say that, like, Glassman could respond that way. If you put people first, then he couldn't have responded in such a negative light. So
I agree with you 1,000%.
That's a really good summary of that.
Yeah, that's actually better than I was ever have put it. But yeah, that email, now that you say that we have a thing in on seminar staff, which is like, when you're talking or when you're presenting, like, it shouldn't be about you. And now that you say that, that statement comes back to me now, and I'm like, that email was about her.
Yeah.
Only
100%.
Yeah. And so people were just like, I can't believe he would respond to that. And I'm just like, what rock have you been living under that you think he wouldn't respond like that? I don't. You can be angry about it, you can be upset, but I don't know that shocked is the appropriate emotion for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so that doing that, and then I wrote up a thing about it, and it's that was kind of my thought in saying that CrossFit has done a lot for the Black community and the health community and health and fitness. And I don't think people really understand what health and fitness looked like before CrossFit became huge, but Ollie lifting wasn't big before CrossFit, and that is an important thing to understand.
It was about as prevalent as curling in the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. No one knew those names. You don't know Maddie Rogers. You don't know all these other, Kendrick Ferris and all that stuff. I mean, they were big, but no one had a clue. And then CrossFit changed so that there's a lot of different paradigms of fitness that people were starting to get into. So, and there's a whole track we could go down with that. And then wake up this morning, and Glassman says the Floyd 19, and I just sit back and it's like, well, CrossFit did all the same things. CrossFit is still, the methodology is great, and all of the means for how you can get into it, affiliated and all of that stuff, beautiful. However, as the owner of CrossFit saying that and kind of making light of what the situation is, it really put us in a struggle of what to do next. And we're still trying to navigate what we're going to do next and how we feel about that, because it really does put us in a spot where if the owner is really kind of still making light and not understanding what the situation is about, then and doesn't take themselves out of the situation, we might have to do something different. And we're still trying to figure out what that is, but that really kind of set us in a whole different mindset of, just because we understand and know the CrossFit methodology and philosophy, and we believe that, but the owner is putting us in a really weird spot. So yeah, that's
I had, had some conversations with people yesterday and late last night about some of this stuff. Last year, was it, when that owner, coach, CEO had said something against the gay community, right, on Twitter?
Oh,
right?
That's 2 years.
Actually, it's a little bit longer than that.
That's Russell Berger. Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah, Russell Berger. Yeah, he was I forget what his title was, but yeah.
But I mean, that happened, and CrossFit came out swinging, man. They were nah, fuck that, we're pro-gay, let's go, LGBTQ everything, they were all about it, and it was so quick, and they were so aggressive about how they treated that. And with something like this, you almost expect them to be oh shit, this is really serious. We just watched somebody die, murder porn on our phones and TVs, and you're not gonna come out swinging for the fences on this either. You're not gonna help, you're not gonna say anything, you're not gonna support.
I think it was even more confusing, because we had literally just had Sen on the show, and he had talked about what they were going to do collaboratively, and then it was just
yeah.
So can I ask you guys
going back to being confused? I'm now left is right, right is left, down is up, and up is down. I was just I don't understand anymore.
But Fern and I spoke before we got on this, and I guess so. My question to you guys: what did that mean? What he said?
That's a fair question.
When he responded to that thread and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like he just responded Floyd 19.
Mm-hmm.
What did that?
I think the only it's Floyd 19, I believe, is the exact.
Okay, but what did that mean?
I mean, my assumption, thinking super deep, is him saying that Floyd 19, all these protests and rebellion, is the same as a pandemic, right? Same BS as a pandemic. It's, COVID-19 is ruining people's lives and making a mess of things. Floyd 19 is the next disease, the next pandemic, the next issue. That's how I took it. I saw it and I was like, that's kind of fucked up that you would say something like that.
Right. And one of the things that, when I first read it, I said the same thing to myself. I'm like, I don't even understand this. Like,
That was my exact response.
Yeah.
I was like, what does that mean? I was like, I literally don't know. I mean, and just for since we've been on this podcast, I've been getting nonstop DMs and text messages about the topic, like just bombarded.
And that I mean I'm sure is a lot of the responses. Originally you look at it and you're like, Floyd 19, what? Not anger, not happiness. You're just
Confused.
right, straight confusion, just straight up confusion. And then after the confusion, I mean, if you read the comments, it's people are upset. And the reason why is that we have the confusion and he hasn't said anything else. So if we're looking at someone who we're waiting on some type of response about the subject, and we're looking at I can't remember the organization that posted that.
I believe it was a National Institute for Health, but I could be wrong.
So something like that on the lines of that.
Look it up. I'm pretty sure it was.
But after he did that on the post, and they were posting about racial issues and that racism is a black health issue or something along the lines of that. And then he writes just that little statement. We're thinking, well, you can't say anything else. And now we have this really vague, I'm not sure how to feel. Write something meaningful because you've written so many meaningful things before. So if you don't let us be confused by this. We can't look at you and say, okay, this person's finally on board. You just kind of wrote a thing that we have to kind of say to ourselves, what does Floyd 19 mean? When we're asking for, it could just be a sentence like, I agree with this, or I guess I disagree. But that was saying that he is watching and looking at stuff, but chose not to say anything except for on this post being very ambiguous.
Holly, you look like you want to chime in there.
Ambiguous and kind of flippant. I mean, it sends you a detailed message, and then and you're like, not sure exactly what you mean by it, but I'm hurt that you didn't take more time to explain yourself or be clear with your message, and that you thought that saying it's Floyd 19 was enough of a statement after the bit of silence that CrossFit has had in general.
I understand the idea. I understand what you guys are saying about, like if you're going to say something real, and say, you have this, we have a microphone. His is far greater than ours. And I hadn't thought about it, Brian, from your perspective of, I was telling the story about Russell. I remember it. It was because it was on my birthday, and it was my birthday recently. And I was like, I remember going to work out, seeing the tweet, finishing my workout, and being like, Russell was fired. Like, that's how fast it happened. Like, it was that I went into a gym and left, and like my friend was fired, and like all the ramifications of that. So I definitely understand that. I spoke to Fern about this earlier. And again, this is just kind of how I took it, and I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts about it. COVID-19, whatever your beliefs, I think the general consensus has become this was important, and it's not something to take lightly, but it was a really small thing. And the bigger picture was, hey, our overall health and wellness of this country needs to be improved because the immunocompromised are the ones getting more impacted. So it's not COVID-19. It's like, hey, we need to improve the health of the country. We need to get people exercising and meats, vegetables, nuts, seeds, etc. So when I saw that, my initial reaction was like, okay, he's saying, let's not take George Floyd's murder lightly. But like we've been saying all along, it's like, that's not, like, the bigger issue is everything we've been discussing. Does that make sense? I mean, am I taking it lightly? Am I giving someone that I admire too much leeway? Like, what do you guys think about that?
So I don't think you can be wrong because it was so
we don't
big.
know, right? Yeah.
I think it's left for interpretation.
I agree with you, Brian. And so like people been hitting me up, they're like, what are your thoughts, literally? And I was like, So I was trying to unpack it and like put it together. I'm like, okay, if I I was in his brain, like what? So I'm trying to put history and context together, and I'm like, I'm like, I don't know, but like if I had to make a weird assumption based on what I know, I think it would be like, okay, we know he's a staunch libertarian. We know he basically hates everything government, right? And he's been fighting this fight with the NIH, the CDC, anybody involved in like public health and health sciences. And the statement that they put, which I believe it was, racism is a public health issue. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking about it. I'm just like, I could potentially see where he would think that was an overstep for that institution particularly, right? Because I mean, to me, that their statement is confusing, right? But and I'm happy to talk about it. But like, I see racism like it's a socioeconomic issue, it's a civil rights issue, it's a human rights issue, it is a criminal justice issue. Like, it's a lot of things. I don't understand how it's a public health issue, but I'm happy to have the conversation about what that is and what that looks like. Maybe I just never thought about it that way. I don't know. But at initial thought, I'm like, I don't know what that has to do with public health. But Cameron brought it up earlier. He's like, yeah, there's some problems within the public health system with regard to, I don't know if you're referring to this, Cameron, but like the one I am aware of is Black females giving birth die at a higher rate. I don't know if that's what you're referring to. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, maybe that is what they were referring to. Right. But then it was just, I don't know. Right. So it's like two vague statements followed by each other. And we're all just like, I don't know what's happening right now. You know,
Yeah.
So that was my initial thoughts, like trying to unpack it, because again, I'm biased, right? Like, I love CrossFit and I know a lot of the good that it's done, and I want to continue to do that. And I'm trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. And then I'm just lost, like shrugging,
Yeah.
like this, like that emoji. I'm just like, literally, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you.
Well, so again, I don't think that you could be wrong in that statement at all because it's so ambiguous. But you know, the story we tell ourselves based off of everything else is 100% true. With them not putting out a statement for so long, and with their, you know, if you glaze over the Rocket CrossFit email and you know, and don't get into depth, which I think Cameron was 100% right with that. You know, you can easily make the assumption and go to a negative place first about what he posted, you know, especially as a Black community feeling under-supported. Your first thought and your first assumption is, oh fuck, here we go again. Like he's done it again. Obviously, on the other end, you know, what you guys are saying can be 100% true. You know, he can be like really with those 4 words, like advocating like wicked hard and making a huge point, you know, that he hasn't said yet or hasn't explained. And, you know, I don't think that that's like way out of the realm of what Greg Glassman would do. But with the previous context of what was going on, it's really easy for someone to go like, dude, like, come on, and take it as a negative thing right away.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, again, like it's just so confused because like I don't know, man. It's one of those things where it's just like, I know things that have been done in the past that people are unaware of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like really, really good things. And that's why it's confusing. And I don't know, maybe like maybe, and I didn't even think about it until we're having this conversation. We're kind of like batting these ideas around. It's just like, maybe like, again, it could go either way. It's just like, there's not enough information for us to just be like
Yeah.
whatever. He could be saying, he could be looking at COVID and be like, COVID is a microcosm of a larger problem. Right. And then he could very well be saying the same thing. He was like, this is a microcosm of a larger problem.
Could
Right.
be.
I don't know. And we're just like,
yeah, that's the big issue, is that like people that are saying he's racist. I think that's way too far. Right.
Yeah.
I could almost undoubtedly, that's not true. Based on things that I know he has done, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's true.
Right. Yeah, just looking at just some history. I don't know Glassman in any regard like you all do, but I can't imagine what I've seen so far that he's done and the organization of HQ has done being racist. However, it's tone deaf. is really what it's just that little blurb, and we're like, oh, you got to give us more, and that's why we're so confused. Otherwise, we have to play games with our head, saying like, well, I know that he's not racist, so what is he really trying to say? You all have a different take of versus what we have a take versus somebody who really doesn't know Glassman at all and is not into CrossFit anything other than being a CrossFit athlete or in the gym, the goers, and there's those black people are looking at it like, well, fuck this guy. So everybody's got to put this up to interpretation, and that's not any way to establish any kind of argument or any side of something where there's so much like gray area that we have to fill in all the cracks. So that's really why, yeah, it's just interesting to hear your take on it. And because I see a lot of people are super mad about it, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean, I could see why. Like,
yeah.
Fuck, you know. But again, it's one of those things where like, did we all misinterpret it? We don't know. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, I really want to think the best based on all of our experiences with CrossFit that we can assume that that's not what it meant. Because I actually agree with you, Cameron. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I don't fucking know, man. Like the things that have been going on, it's like society as a whole is so incoherent, it doesn't even make sense, right? Like just everything that we're seeing over the past like 3 weeks, it's like stay inside or you want people to die. And then it's like everybody go outside and go to these protests. I'm like, literally yesterday you were telling me that I was going to kill somebody by staying inside, but now it's like go protest. And it's like,
yeah,
weed is illegal, but it's an essential business. Is like what? Like the cops should arrest people for, you know, opening their businesses, and then we're like, let's defund the police. I'm just like, I don't know anymore. Like, and that's why I think it's okay if people feel confused. Like that's kind of where I'm at. Like I am just fucking confused. Like I don't know, dude.
Oh, crazy world, man.
Well, if after 2 hours of talking you're still confused, Vern, there's no help. There's no help for you.
That's true too. I never claimed to be smart.
Just go back and shoot some hoops.
Better practice.
Well, in wrapping up, is there anything else the three of you would like to add?
Don't argue
I mean,
on the internet.
Hey, well, that's
just good life advice.
That transcends any race, right there.
Yeah.
Holly, you know, you were the one that reached out to us for one, and we appreciate it. And I hope anyone that's listening, you know, all Holly did was literally shoot us a text or a DM, and it was like, yeah, we want to talk about this. You know, we want to be part of the solution. You know, and it's not just in the CrossFit world, but for me in the world, like watching that, like, I don't know. And did you guys see that other documentary, When They See Us?
Yes.
Like I couldn't even, I was watching it. This was, must have been a year ago now. And I like had to like read while I was watching it because it was like that painful. Like I was like, I couldn't even watch it. Like that's how bad, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like it wasn't that it wasn't important. I was like, I literally just can't sit here and watch this. It's like heartbreaking to see something like that. So I think, you know, the more things that are coming out like that and this other documentary and then conversations like this, like I'm fired up to actually do more than post a black square on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, so Holly, you know, really want to commend you for
thank
wasn't
Thank you so
you know,
much.
we could have came back and
you.
been like, no, you know, you're crazy. I remember you from your level 1. You couldn't do muscle up. And, you know, I know that wasn't true because you're stronger than I am. But you know, we appreciate you reaching out to us. It was really, it was important that you did, and thanks for then connecting us with Cameron and Brian, who you guys have been great. I mean, definitely want to talk more with you guys about just affiliate stuff. I mean, working with your significant other and 3 other women. You also mentioned at one point, Brian, that your wife is your partner in the business as well. So
you guys have clearly figured out something
crazy.
I haven't figured
yeah,
out.
That's crazy. So, but any last words? Let's let you guys take it. Wrap it up.
I mean, just again, thank you to Holly. I think thank you to Holly and thank you to you guys for an opportunity to, you know, to be vocal about this stuff. Because, you know, like we said, in terms of being in person at our boxes, we don't push it on people pre-class or during class. And, you know, we open ourselves up after class, but to be able to, you know, have that open conversation with you guys, I think I feel, you know, a little bit more at ease I can take a deep breath now that I've vocalized a little bit, you know, with a couple like-minded, even if you weren't like-minded, just in general, to vocalize this stuff.
Yeah, I also appreciate you, Holly, for reaching out and being able to do this, and you guys for letting us on the podcast. Just same kind of sentiment. Like, I like being able to get out and talk to people about it, and just really just hearing everybody's different sides on it. I don't really care if you don't agree with me about it, or if you're just like, I hate black people. I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that a little bit.
By the way,
what you got going on here?
Oh, okay.
Is there like a black affiliate owners group, Holly? Like, how did you just like? She was like this. I'm gonna get some owners that are black. I'm like, okay. Like 30 minutes later, she's like, I got two. I'm like, how do you just go, like where do you go to find people?
There is.
There are a lot.
Oh, okay. So there really is.
Yeah, black box owners, black CrossFitters, because, you know, for those members that go into boxes that, even though the community is very supportive, they don't see anyone that looks like them. And, you know, a lot of people who do CrossFit who are black, when they tell their friends they do CrossFit, they say that, you know, that's white people stuff that
So
they do.
if someone is listening and they're whatever color, doesn't matter, but want to find this, where can someone go and find a group like that? Just on Facebook?
Yeah, we're all part of a Facebook group
Yeah.
that we like had just joined recently. I just joined it recently. I'm not sure about.
Cool, because maybe for I mean, I coached in Naples, Florida, and there, you know, may have been one black person that ever came into that box. So yeah, maybe, you know, that'll be something for them that they can reach out and be a part of.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact name of it. It's the Melanin CrossFitters.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Let me ask a question to you three, since you're black. What does it mean when you say something and then you say pause?
Pause.
Yeah. Have you heard? I've seen it happen a couple of times, but I've only seen black people do it. It was Kevin Hart. And I was like, and then I saw a fighter last night, Aljamain Sterling, great victory over someone that I know here in Colorado. But he said something that said pause. And I was like, okay, I feel like it's saying like, I just said something profound. Take a moment and pause. But does it mean something else?
Yeah.
So-
I'm watching Cameron's face.
I
Hey,
would,
this is what it's all about, asking the questions.
I would equate it to like when people say like no homo. It's more like that. Like, yeah.
Listen, that's a great. I know what you're talking about now. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so like
maybe it's changed. I don't know.
yeah, like typically like if you're like in like a group of dudes and like you're like, oh wow, like, you know, maybe like they say something about like, oh, like that was like a long hard workout, they'd be like, oh, pause,
Like,
because there's a implication of, you know, like long and hard, like
I gotta go back and listen now to what they said. I thought it was actually like, I took it as completely the opposite. So all right, mental note: don't say anything that would cause you to say pause, but don't say pause either. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, don't say pause.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave that back somewhere else, man.
all right, see, we gotta
You don't
clear
know-
these things up. This is
If
what
you
it's all
don't understand
about.
it, don't talk about it. If you don't
This is,
understand
but
it.
hey, what a
I-
great point to wrap up on. Like, I didn't know, and I feel comfortable asking. Like,
yeah. No, for sure.
That's it.
anything I felt like maybe there was one more thing you wanted to say, Holly. Did I interrupt?
Probably, but not anymore. Not after that.
Right.
Well, in our
Pause there. We'll pause.
Yeah.
it's our first 2-hour episode, Fern. So hopefully most listeners have stopped right prior to that because
Well,
that's
that's okay because it's probably the most important podcast we've ever done. So
Yeah, that was great. So black people are dope, and that's what we're gonna call it that.
no, we're not.
We're not gonna.
We'll figure out
We're
something
not gonna
else.
call it that. But you guys have been great, and you are certainly welcome back at any time. And obviously, please share this, with anyone you can, and feel free to have them reach out. And we'd love to hop on this more. We really want to use this, like you said, or just having those conversations and talking to people is a great first step. And luckily, we've created something that does have a little bit of a microphone, and we want to use it to provide these discussions. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you
Absolutely.
guys
Thank you.
for everything you do, having the conversations, what you're doing in your affiliates, all that stuff. Like, just a genuine thank you. And again, I didn't say it, but thank you, Holly, for putting this together.
Oh, thank you guys for responding.
Mhm.
For hearing me
All
out.
right.
I really
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for staying on. Feel free to stay on for another minute, but I'm going to hit this stop button. We're done recording. So thank you again.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't already, do us a favor, head over to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for either Fern or myself, hit us up, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com, or send us a DM over on Instagram at Best Hour of Their Day. Once again, we couldn't do this without the amazing community, and you are a part of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting Best Hour of Their Day.